Yeah, I think to start things off, because I think we're all familiar with the situation where you work in a big company, you have sort of maybe some notes on your phone about the great big next idea. But from there, one of the things we hear a lot is how scary it is to actually take action and actually make that move into a different world. So maybe Steph or July or anyone who started a company in this case, maybe you could talk a little bit about what was it like for you to actually take that first step, to actually take action and move away from your old world, maybe?
I'm just curious, how many here are currently in a corporate career? And the others, you're in startups? Between corporate and startups, so you're nowhere.
Awesome. I would describe itself as being nowhere.
I'm kidding. Okay, but just to have a view of like half or so. The only thing I would say about this, I had zero idea I would end up where I am now when I started thinking about what else I want to do. Sure, I knew I wanted to help people, work with people psychologically, but in terms of the current company I'm in, and the current people I work with, and Helen I work with over there just arrived, I didn't know any of them 6 years ago. Like most people in my life that are now very, very close to me, I didn't know anyone 6 years ago. So for me, the from idea to action is more like in Matrix, follow the white rabbit. It's like there's something that emerges, like a desire or a hunch or just a discomfort or a frustration of where you are now. And then it's just more like keep following the thread and see where it goes, because it's just a series of actions that don't make sense when you start. They only make sense like much later on.
So since you've made that transition into more of an entrepreneurial world, like what are the things you've potentially lost and what are the main things you've gained from that experience?
Very quickly, you do lose certain things. You lose a lot of support that you take for granted, like IT and finance and all sorts of things are done for you in the corporate world that don't exist in the startup world. So yes, they can be heavy processes, but actually they're so useful. And you just realize it when you don't have them anymore and you're like, fuck, no, this is really challenging to do. So you lose a lot of that. You lose a sense of identity, some kind of pride or prestige or status associated with an easy career to talk about, right, with people. Much easier to say, I'm a banker, I'm a lawyer, regardless of the expectations of people, than to try to explain what is it that you're doing when nobody really understands your product or your service. So you lose that. You lose financial. Well, I lost some financial security and stability, and therefore some lifestyle that I had before. So that's all like realities, right? And of course, I want to make it work, and I want to make a lot of money in the future because I desire to go back to the same level. But it's going to take like a large number of years before I get there. What I gained, a lot more autonomy, a lot more meaning in my everyday life. Like the type of service that I provide is something that's very dear to me, and I really love doing it. So of course my life is way more fulfilling now. But I think it would be naive to use the word you mentioned to not be aware of the things you're going to lose if you choose to engage in a different path.
In that very, very early stage, we often quite meet people who have great ideas, but the reality of it would be that they would need multiple £100,000 to actually execute. Could you maybe talk a little bit about bootstrapping versus fundraising? And
just the one thing I'll say, it's interesting. We at iDiscover have a different. We've never gone for any external funding. There was a little bit at the beginning of capital brought by the founder, because he was running his own company. But everything else has been generated through the services and the products that we offer. So we're entirely self-funded, and we don't want to go for external investment to keep the autonomy and the philosophy that we have in the company. And that brings a whole different set of challenges. Obviously, the growth is a little bit slower than it would normally be, but it means you get to grow strongly, properly, because you have to have a business model that works. And so just on the flip side of this funding versus bootstrapping, most startups that I know of, they go for funding, but they can burn for years and years and years with a business model that's basically broken. It's not working, and they're just eating cash all the time. And so yes, you can get a bit of funding from friends and family, to get started, £25,000, whatever. That's not very hard to come up with. but too often it's almost, we see like people in startups making almost excuses and blaming the fact that they're not getting enough the money that they need for their great idea to come to fruition. And it's like, well, maybe the idea is not that great, or the business model behind it is not that good, because you need all of this cash to make it become real, and it's a bit like unrealistic. So that's just more something in favor, or at least in favor of thinking about, you know, how good is the business model? How quickly could you rely on yourself without the funding? Of course, you can have a moonshot thinking where you still need like millions or whatever, but too often it's kind of like the easy excuse of getting money from the outside instead of trying to generate yourself quickly.
Yes, Ben, a specific question to you, because obviously you're a coach. If I'm correct, and from talking to past you as well, you work a lot with young professionals looking for career fulfillment. Are there one or two issues that you hear over and over and over again, and what do you say to them?
Issues that I hear over and over again. I mean, it's very common to begin with, like misalignments in terms of your professional path. For all of us, it's a challenge that all of us here at some point or another faced, possibly will face again, and probably everybody here will go through that too. Whether it's coming out of university, whether it's in your mid-30s when you're really successful but you're kind of done with your first career, whether it's when you're about to retire. It's like, what do you do next once you're retired, right? It's like career fulfillment and knowing what to do that is paying, that is meaningful, that is recognized, that we can use our skills for. It's like, that's the first thing. It's super common. The second thing that I see is that a lot of people are actually, I've touched upon it, but they take for granted a lot of things that they have in the current place. And I did that when I was in banking, for sure. Like I was blaming and complaining and all you can imagine. And I never regretted my decision. I'm very grateful for everything I did, but I realized that I was just a bit immature about the way I considered, you know, fuck this, I'm gonna go do something else. And it served me at the time, but looking back, I'm like, there's a lot of people that are challenged in their professional role, and we can help them first like calm down and really take stock of what's going on, how are they learning, what kind of mentors they have around, what's great about the current situation, because that's a much more productive place to then think about the next step instead of just throwing everything out the window and have a blank page and think that that's the better way. And then the second piece that I would say to maybe encourage people to do some self-reflection on their own is to realize that throughout their life, there's a lot of evidence already of the things they love to do, of the things they find really meaningful, of the difference they make to other people, the things that get them in flow, you know, in this flow state, in their elements. There's already a lot of evidence in our life. We just need to learn to look better. Instead of just considering what we studied and what our dad and mom wants us to do, and you know, we use these inputs and that's it. But actually our psychology is already showing us what we love to do. So I think people can already start to look at their history differently, and that will give them some answers.
Oh yeah, if you could go back in time, now that you've gone through this transition, like what advice would you give your younger self, or to anyone, I guess, for that matter, in this crowd?
I was lucky enough. I have a problem with this mic. Hello? I can speak really loud, that's fine. No, it's not. Okay. Maybe it works here. No, I don't know. It's not working very well, sorry. Or maybe it's me. I was lucky enough to have someone early on my journey who shared with me the words, stay in the game. And that was very, very early on. And I didn't really know what the hell he meant at the time. I was like, sure, I mean, I'm leaving my job to get into this game, so I'm definitely gonna stay for a little while. But I learned to appreciate over time that what he meant is that there's gonna be a lot of like afternoons where you're like discouraged and you don't know who else to talk to, and you don't know what the hell's gonna happen next, and when's the money coming in, and all sorts of fears and challenges and embarrassment about what other people say about what you're trying to do or accomplish, and naysayers, So it's a long journey, and so that's one piece of advice that I got, definitely, and I'm so grateful I did. What I would add, that I've had to learn the hard way, is just to be patient. Honestly, just to be patient with the journey, because as I said, like, I had no clue that I would be here 6 years later, and it's amazing where I am now, and it's nothing like where I'm going to be in 10 years time, right? But startup world, you want to get things there so quickly. You have your idea, you have your passion, you want the money because you know if you get that money you can do so much, and it's all exciting, and there's a great thing about this energy, but there's also a bit of like just slow down and enjoy at the same time the ride, because you're not getting these years back. So trying to get to your seed funding, trying to get to your Series A, trying to get to, every time if you create these destinations, it's like you hold your breath for that long, and then only when you get there you breathe. It's like you're wasting 99% of the time instead of just appreciating that you're growing in that amount of time, and that's the real gold, that's the real prize. So for me, it would have been just be a bit more patient about where you're trying to get to. You're getting there, it's coming, but there's a process.
Great. Does anyone in the crowd have a question? There must be someone. Yes.
Yeah, you will get every different story anyway under the sun. Some people who knew from day one and left on day two, and some people who stayed 15 years and then they got fired, or there's everything. I think if you ask the question, you already know that at some point you want to go. The question is just how quickly do you do it? And again, for some people, it's like, it works for their drivers, it works for their values, they don't have responsibilities or whatever, so they can just like quit and let's see, right? Tomorrow morning I wake up and I'll do something else, and I don't have there's no risk. For other people, it's like you're gonna create like a decent plan because of different things you value, different things that matter to you in your life. That's the smarter, wiser way to do it. For this specific person, it might take 6 months or 2 years, or so. I think it's not so much that you will wake up one morning or something will happen inevitably in the company that will make you go over the edge, but it's more over a number of days of accumulated frustration and accumulated discomfort of like, this is not where I want to be, or there is something else there that I really aspire to do. And you start to develop that awareness that you're just, okay, at some point I got to do something about it instead of just staying here. And then knowing yourself enough to be wise in the way you structured that transition. Do you need to phase out and phase in? Do you need to transform your role, or do you need to stop and start something new? There's the 3 ways basically, and it's different for everybody. So, but I think to some degree, it's almost like if I was to use my example in this case, the point of discomfort has to be big enough. For me, it was so frustrating. I felt I was wasting my life, that it was just an evidence. It still took 18 months for me to leave, because I retrained. I was using the money to buy courses, to train myself in NLP, coaching, hypnotherapy, all sorts of things. I was like bulimic I was getting the meaning elsewhere, but my job was helping me because it was funding this quest of like meeting people, finding mentors, discovering what exists out there, because I'm in the bubble of Canary Wharf. I have no idea what even startup world is about. So that's what I'm saying. It doesn't have to be one day to the next, but if you know there's something that's calling you, just start the process. Start slowly by going to events and do more of that. Talk to people, and it will happen in the time that it's supposed to happen for you.
Anyone else with a question? No? Go on. Yes.
So my father spent 30 years in a financial career in Total, the French oil and gas company. Very traditional background, lived internationally, expatriates. I studied in business school in HEC in France, so I studied business economics. So initially when I told him I wanted to leave and do hypnotherapy, which was the first thing I went for, and I have nobody in my family who's like a doctor or anything related to like health and well-being, it was a little bit weird. For them, to say the least. I think, honestly, not everybody will support your decision, and some people will. The people who don't support it, to be honest, there's the 2 first reasons that come to mind. One is they care about you, and so in their mind, they think whatever you have now is like safer. Two, they're projecting whatever their own fears and values and insecurities are onto your decision. So it's more like be prepared that, yeah, some people will not support your choice even though they're very close to you. But you have to be more certain than their doubts. You have to be more clear that, well, it matters to you, I'll make it work. I know what I'm taking my chances, it's my life. Don't expect them to support you or be pissed off at them for not doing it, because they have a right to also think it's not wise, and that's fine. But I think over time, as they see that you're fulfilled, that you're challenging yourself, that you're growing, that you're enjoying the up and down journey, they also start to calm down and realize that it was a good thing for you. It's just you have to go there first, right? But you will always have people supporting you. If you challenge yourself, you will always have people who show up to help. But not everybody, and maybe not the people very close to you.